Daedalic Entertainment are in the firing line once again, and with their varied history on my channel, you might be wondering on which side of the poo and not poo line this one falls on. You might also be wondering what game I'm actually talking about. Well, you could have read the video title, but I'll tell you anyway. The game is Silence, the sequel to 2009's The Whispered World, and in a historic moment of pattern breaking, it falls on the not poo side. Two Daedalic games I like in a row, ladies and jelly spoons. It's truly a new age or something. Especially so considering I'd kind of assumed this would never come out. Announced yonks ago, fell into a long period of radio silence, ARF, before suddenly getting released. Not without any fanfare, but not the "it finally done" explosion of PR that I expected. You might even be excused for not recognising this as a Whispered World sequel. For one thing, it's 3D instead of 2D, and the tone is a lot darker this time round. We open on a quaint little town with an astonishingly low frame rate. I don't know why that is. The official trailer looks okay, but this happened to me on two different computers. Still, it's only the FMVs that have this problem, and they're all confined to about the first 10 minutes. It's all very picturesque, there's some kids building a snowman, how nice. Then an air raid siren goes off. Oh dear. Boy runs and grabs his sisters before hauling ass to a bomb shelter. It's okay, I'm sure this is just a precaution. No, bombs are falling way too close. Okay, they're in, that's fine. They've closed the door, they've escaped all the carnage, everything is... No, you are seriously not about to blow up a child, are you? Don't do it, Silence, don't you do... Jesus Christ. Child death in the first minute. Not explicit, but... Jesus. So aye, darker tone this time. If you don't want the first game spoiled for you, then we need to part at this point. The first controllable segment has the boy, Noah, retelling the story of the first game to cheer up his sister, Rini, and to give us the interface tutorial while they're at it. For purposes of clarification, reminding and seriously Whispered World spoilers here, the first game took place in Noah's dreams whilst he was in a coma. He was given the choice of continuing to dream and consequently dying in real life, or waking up and dooming the dream world. Back when I reviewed it, I didn't think the original game had a satisfying conclusion, dangerously close to "hit his head in the shower, it was all a dream" trope, but it sets up the whole story of Silence to the point where I'll probably forgive it. At the very least I won't be as down on that twist as I used to be. And given the opening we just saw, you have to wonder if the quote-unquote bad choice of staying in the dream world was really the wrong one. To bring us back to the story of this game, a bomb collapses the shelter and Noah has to go in search of Rini. And the first thing he encounters is a slew of artifacts from his previous adventure as Sadwick the Saddest Clown. When he gets past this historic obstacle course, he finds himself back in the dream world from the previous game, which is also named Silence because this has all been too straightforward so far. So how has the world of Silence changed since we last saw it? Well, as mentioned previously, the game is now in 3D and holy genitals does it look good. I praised the graphics of the first game as well, that's something Daedalic rarely screws up, but damn! There's a mixture of 2D and 3D assets used from what I can tell, and when you throw graphics techniques like God Rays into the mix, things you don't normally get to see in pointy clicks, it works so very well. Finest bump mapping on a woolly hood I ever did see, 20 out of 10. Then you get expressive and charming animations and some gorgeous vistas on top of that. Well, behind that I guess, they're backgrounds, that's how backgrounds work. Whoever was in charge of the art direction deserves a raise, because I'm about to take the crown of best looking point and click game I can remember playing off of the interactive adventures of Dog Mendoza and Pizza Boy and give it to Silence. There we are. It was a short reign, but goddamn. Still gets to keep the longest eventual video title award, earned it so it did. We're not only dealing with a far prettier game than last time, we've also got a change of interface. It's all context sensitive now, you'll usually get one verb per object. Look, use, lick, talk, kick. No need to switch between them, you mouse over the object and find out what your verb is. Now, you know those puzzles where you pick up an item, but instead of putting it in your impossibly large pocket, you have to use it on something else or put it straight down? Silence has those too, but by default it'll highlight where the object needs to go, with the outline of the object. The game's pretty good at visually separating out the different mechanisms. You can turn off that outline if it makes things too obvious. Speaking of objects, inventory items don't work in the traditional fashion. The interface will indicate when you can use an item on something. I'll get back to that one later because Spot also returns into— oh my god, he's as cute as ever. Look at the Spot. Possibly the part of the game that gains the most from transitioning to 3D. Spot can still transform into different surprisingly useful forms, but you can click and drag him to puff him up or iron him down. Harder to do in 2D, and it's a nicer interface than the medallion one. Yay all round. There's a few more things like this in the interface arsenal, dragging something to push or pull it, trying to balance on something that's perilous or otherwise allergic to staying still. I wouldn't try these bits with a trackpad myself. Something retained from the Whispered World is the object highlighting, except now it comes with hints up the top of the screen. I'm not against having a hint system, as I've said more than once, but I'd rather have had hints and object highlighting separate. As with the very obvious you grabbed object, use object here icons, you can turn off showing hints when highlighting objects, but then you don't get any hints without going back into the options menu and turning it back on. They're both nice, friendly features to have, but they serve different purposes for me, and I'd rather be able to summon either one separately. I don't want to accidentally read a hint when all I wanted to do was avoid a pixel hunt. A lot of these changes might indicate to your attractive, pleasant smelling self that Silence was intended to be easier than its predecessor. Maybe easier is the wrong word actually, I might plump for streamlined instead. Somewhat backed up given you can't pick a verb or inventory item to use, it's entirely picked for you. Or the fact that you'll never have to travel more than about 2 screens to solve a puzzle, you're basically travelling between small areas, yet the puzzles still have some substance. With a few more focused on subtle cues and order of events, you'll revisit some areas as both Noah and Rini, which presents different challenges given that one is comparatively strong whereas the other is tiny human. Going back to the near automatic use of inventory items, I don't find this as egregious as I did in the Orion Conspiracy because it doesn't give away a solution. It's more like the last stage in the streamlining process before it went too far and used the item for you. Oh Christ, not even 2 months into a new year and I'm already mentioning the Orion Conspiracy. That bodes well. In all honesty, this reminds me of later Telltale games. You'll never have to pick a specific item to use, but it's not done in a way that spoils the solution to a puzzle. And just to push that Telltale Conspiracy theory home a little bit more, you'll occasionally be asked to make a choice, be it a conversation response or an action to take, usually one of 2 choices. I haven't replayed the game to see if there's any big changes as a result of those, but certain choices, maybe 1 or 2 in the game, will lead straight to a game over. Yep, this game has game overs. Could be from a choice you make if you fail to do something in a certain time limit, but either way you get a quick death cutscene and then it's done in a perfectly simple way. You could have had the gore-drenched "you died" from the Resident Evil games, the strangely obtuse critical mission failure from the Mass Effect series, but in Silence, the game's logo, a flaming ball, simply gets blown out. And then you dump back to whatever triggered your grisly demise, no harm done apart from missing out on an achievement. Now, the story of Silence initially revolves around Noah finding Rini and moves on to their efforts to escape the dream world. Especially important because Noah remembers from his previous adventure that their being in the world of Silence means someone is on the verge of death. This is what I meant about the ending of the Whispered World making Silence as good as it is, because that premise is expanded upon instead of it being ignored or retconned. There isn't a huge benefit to having played the first game beforehand, good as it is. The necessary knowledge is laid out pretty early. We already know the twist from the previous game, but now we get to discover what that twist means in the current context, and there's still more to spoil, so I'll just leave it there. My policy of don't spoil story of good game because I think it good still applies here. And with a story more complex than last time, with a well animated set of characters, I think this might be the better of the two. If you're looking for an experience just like the Whispered World, you might want to try the free demo first. That should be enough to let you judge if it's your bag. I think Silence is pretty damn good and pretty damn pretty to boot. It might have let a few of the old point and click conventions slide, it might be a little more focused on narrative than gameplay, you might find the kid sister character annoying, but there's something so charming about it that kept me playing long enough to fill up my hard drive of captured footage, which then didn't save properly, so I had to play a bunch of it again, which was fine because I enjoyed the game. Granted, I captured the footage in lossless and recorded to a 500GB SSD I also used for my window install, so it's not a total shock, but still, harder to put down than some of the games I've played recently. Certainly I'd say it's a good sequel, upping the ante in terms of story and graphics, building on what the previous game laid out. The streamlining isn't to be ignored, even if it's something I consider to be personal preference more than anything, but that's what the demo is for. If nothing else, I'd say it's worth trying that demo.